And those guys are doing the first annual event. I love it.
No, you don't. No, you don't.
We are live, by the way.
We are live. Welcome to Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Well, no, hey, don't get too excited. We're just getting started. Here's the intro. And now I think that would be a little appropriate to get excited about it.
Woo! Yay. Excitement indeed. Woo!
So, yeah, man, I miscalculated. Didn't even get to do the fancy 30-second countdown thing or whatever, but we'll have to get through that somehow. And so we got Adam back. That's cool.
Don't forget to spend those sponsors too, James.
We'll do that, yeah. I checked in from Amsterdam one time. That was kind of cool. We'll talk about that and hopefully chime in on our discussion of the rally too, as the resident historian on such things. But let's check out our great sponsors, and of course, including 420 Promotions.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe is brought to you by the Botanical Company, Redemption Cannabis, Real Leaf Solutions, the Detroit Nutrient Company, and GrowGreenMI.com.
All right.
I sort of like doing that live every time. We should, keep doing that instead of recording it like pros do.
Yes.
Yeah, it's got a different feel each time.
That's right. Yeah. Sometimes I'm more up, and sometimes I'm not.
So, see, the dudes from Cannabis Lifestyles were on Medical Mondays last night, and that's a really good show. So's the Bros Grow show that comes on afterward. And both of them have a cultivation discussion center. Yeah, they get into lots of other stuff, but just good shows. And there was some discussion about the inclusion of all the people on the boycott list, and specifically DNA genetics, and to what extreme do you how far on down the lines, particularly when some of these people are going out of their way to demonstrate that they're not in tune with that philosophy. So everybody's got a different, I guess, standard or level of tolerance when it comes to that stuff. But and those guys, and I think along with Berg and Roach, continuing to, with DNA genetics on there, as long as they have that connection to SkyMed. But I do appreciate, and I'm sure those guys do too. I sure appreciate Rez Khan and doing what he's done so far for our cause here. And hopefully we'll continue that relationship, and hopefully maybe SkyMed gets pissed off at him enough to break that contract and we can get him off the list. But that was part of the conversation last night. And then Mike Fate and Justin came on, or looking at being involved with a social lounge in Pittsfield Township, possibly. So it was pretty cool. And then we're going to have Dr. Detroit is going to come on with us in a little bit, and he's going to help be mainly part of the discussion about the rally. And we'll get into a couple other things too. John Sinclair, the legendary John Sinclair, as long as everything comes together at that moment, he'll come on. I talked to him a little bit earlier, and he's into it. He's definitely excited about this event coming up on Friday. And then Charlie Strachbine and Andy McFarlane are come on. Charlie just received a recognition for his event that we'll talk about, and Andy's been working a lot on cannabis tourism in a way, and it comes from a field of doing that with the vineyards up in Northwest Michigan and stuff. It's kind of, I think, applying that a little bit to this new world. So that's what we got going on as far as that goes. We do have last night was the 3-year anniversary of adult use legalization in Michigan. And a lot of people celebrated at Cannabis Council. Did you make it down there, Adam?
I did not. I had a myelogram yesterday morning, so I couldn't drive.
I saw those posts. That's right. So you have an update on your scenario there?
I'm waiting to get results. I'm going to need some more surgery, so they're looking to see, where and what.
Right on. So we also have a fundraising telethon coming up next week from tomorrow. It'll be a combination of Jazz Cabbage, Smoke and Rope. Of course, Ryan and the Redemption Foundation are behind this pretty heavily. Smoke and Rope, Jazz Cabbage,
MICIA's Cannabis and Planet Green Trees.
Yeah, Planet Green Trees and the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association broadcast. People are going to register and donate some money and come on the show and talk to us a little bit. We'll talk about some other issues that are going on. I saw it billed as kind of having an activist discussion, which I appreciate, because there'll be a lot of industry stuff involved, but we'll be able to talk a lot about the activism, the advocacy going on, and particularly around these big money interests trying to hurt the caregiver system and try to benefit themselves. I also want to mention that Sons and Daughters United is going to help out 17 families over the holidays. Did a really good job getting some support and help from businesses and people donating for this cause. And I've identified 17 families in need. And we helped them out on Friday. Did a little gathering and discussion and having some pizza and stuff like that at the redemption offices where Covert Law also is. And then went out and bought a lot of the gifts from the list of the kids of these families and got the actual stuff from their list, instead of just some stuff to give them, which I thought was cool. And they also make a distinction between those gifts and just the items that people need. Like some people are getting a bed and some appliances and some medical stuff and just, getting some gifts on top of it.
17 families is a big load, and thanks very much to Sons and Daughters. That's one of those charities that's been around in Michigan for a long time. Josie and Brenda, and the crew of women that they have there that do the wonderful work. It's really a gift to the community. She's from Benton Harbor, all the way down in the southwest corner of the state. And really, if you're from there, you probably know Josie because she's very active. And was, of course, the state's first pediatric patient, I believe. And now she's grown up. Now she's old enough to be a regular medical patient.
She has her own kid.
A regular medical patient.
Regular meaning an adult, yeah. I mean, I'm not going to describe Josie as regular because she'd hit me if I did.
That's what's so funny about it.
Yep. But, yeah, I mean, what a great success story. And still doing good for other people. 17 people at Christmas, 17 families, not just people, 17 families at Christmas. I mean, they do, Jamie, you know about this, tuition offerings, and they sponsor families for different things. So,
and there's going to be a focus on trying to help out the people affected or in some way, not defined yet, surrounding the Oxford shooting tragedy. There's connection to the cannabis community within that school a few times over. As you might imagine, it's all community, and everybody in the community crosses over into the cannabis world. But Nick Agro and unfortunately ourselves and a few others that we know from the immediate movement / community have connection to what went on there. And he thinks there's some room for us to help and to demonstrate that we can show up and help out at a time like that. So along with Sons and Daughters and Nick Agro and others, we're going to work on that kind of a project. Yet to be totally defined.
That sort of leads its way into the discussion of the telethon coming up when we talk about Sons and Daughters, because Sons and Daughters will be one of the recipients of charity funds raised at this telethon coming up.
I think it will.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of really good organizations that are kind of work together and complement each other and create a lot of goodwill and get some stuff done. Naja Naba with the Clean Smoke Initiative and just her work at large of trying to educate and get some good policy in place when it comes to cannabis. Put on a great event last night in Detroit in attendance for a lot of the new Detroit city council meetings. New Detroit city council members, sorry. There were a lot of lawmakers. Cynthia Johnson was there. Representative Scott was there. There were others. Representative Tobias, I think, was there. And a lot of industry people. And there's some really good presentations and just great networking. And it was a good event last night. I got to speak to Andrew Brisboe for a few minutes. Of course, we're right on the heels of this Viridis complaint getting its hearing and the judge getting a ruling, and it very much so affects the state. And he was very aware and knew that there's probably going to be some more time in the courtroom coming, and just discussed what we think is kind of the core issue, although it turns out to be kind of a strange ruling. And I did want to talk about this a little bit. I'll bring on Dr. Detroit here. I'm not sure how much you've been following this Dr. Whitty, about this possible lab scandal scenario that's going on.
Possible.
Well, there's some determinations that have to be made. So far, they came in and alleviated their situation with this complaint, which is one of the things I kind of wanted to describe, because I guess so they're two separate businesses, and they formally went after one, thinking that the extension was that they're the same operators, and then it's the same core problem of not properly, following the process to determine the microbial readings. And that was not the case. And because only one actual business, was the focus, apparently, I'm probably many ways to fill this in and make it a little bit more coherent. Maybe we'll hear from Rick and others on it. But because it was a separate business, the cannabis associated with that business was mandated to be off of the recall and returned to the shelves, even if it had failed the microbial testing. Go ahead, Ray. So
the real thing is that the Marijuana Regulatory Agency did sanction 2 labs, and then they ordered 10 retests. Well, before they sanctioned them, they ordered 10 retests of lab materials. It seems by purely chance, all 10 of the randomly selected lab materials came from one of the 2 facilities. Crazy. I mean, I can't imagine what the percentages are on that all 10 randomly selected would be from one facility, but that's what they said in the court of claims. And because of that, because there was no direct testing fault tied to the second facility, they lifted the sanction on the second facility.
Yeah, which was the argument was the process is the same, so it's equally as unreliable as the problem with the first one.
Right.
And that didn't work for the judge. And I personally think in part that the legal counsel for the state did not do a great job. I mean, I'm a third party just watching, not a lawyer, and just kind of checking it out, but still kind of hoping that some issues would be brought up, that some different perspective would be made, and some other things that never happened. Go ahead, Adam.
Both of these labs do have the same ownership, though, correct?
Yeah, and the same processes. That's why.
So they're both owned by a former cop, right?
A group, yeah. That includes a couple former cops. And they also, in their past professions, demonstrated the ability or the willingness to skew science in order to achieve another ends. So they're not unwilling to do that. We don't know all complete conclusions yet, but we do know that.
We do know from the court documents that Viridis themselves filed that the MRA says they have 15 complaints against Viridis on file that they're investigating. We know that the MRA has investigations open into the way that they've done things. I think it's also important to note that you've got a company that's already been sanctioned for failing to follow procedures too. Viridis was hit with a sanction from MRA prior to this for failing to test properly. They said it was a misunderstanding of the rules.
Right, which is keeping the records so you know what kind of environment the testing was done, if the proper temperatures, incubation, or so forth.
I misunderstood the rules, and I ended up in prison. What's their point?
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adam.
Here's Latrice bringing up the rape kit situation, and this does go back to the police labs that admittedly would spend an inordinate amount of resources and time and personnel on minor cannabis issues, because that results in busts and convictions and
Hey, I'm sorry, I don't want to take us away from the topic, but Becky Walters posted in our private chat that those 17 families who talked about being helped by Sons and Daughters United, total of 32 kids.
I posted that when she put it up there.
Big. I know, but for our audio only guests, we have to oftentimes speak those things.
Right on.
But yeah, your comments are right.
Back to Latrish. So back when, and I don't know what's going on currently, because there has been some movement to try to take care of some of that stuff. But when a lot of these abuses were going on in the lab, and these people who were talking about were at the helm, a lot of focus was on these types of convictions and securing focus on and energy and resources on this kind of stuff, and not these several backlogged set of rape kits that were in a warehouse in Detroit. And
these people destroyed thousands of lives.
Yep.
Thousands of lives. There's no excuse for what they did, and for them to be able to get away with anything in the cannabis game is just, it shows you how they know how to play the system. They know how to play the game. They know what's going to happen when they have a miscommunication, and they're not afraid to lose their license. You can bet that. These people know what they're doing. They're professionals.
Well, Adam, I think if you feel like you've got a suit of armor on all the time, and that armor used to be named the Attorney General's office, but now that armor is the best lawyer's money can buy, then I think you pretty much feel invincible, right? Some of these businessmen, I see their actions and I think reckless. Wow. What kind of disregard do you have for your customer base, which are actual human beings? But if you don't ever fear consequence, then sometimes there is no bounds to your behavior, if that makes sense.
Yep. Well, I'm just offended that they're cops. That's all. I don't think we should be dealing with ex-cops, ex-prosecutors, or known snitches. And all three of those people are involved in the legal cannabis market. And I think they should all be exposed. And if you want to do business with them, so be it. But everybody should know.
Well, I think this is a clear example of why not to, because clearly it was a detriment. Mike Whitty, you tried to get in a second ago.
Well, it just makes me worry for government testing and how it could be like Swiss cheese. Setting this particular case aside, it alarms me on the broader context. If someone's spraying fentanyl on bud, does MRA or this company test for fentanyl?
Let me just interrupt. And if anybody ever finds any fentanyl-laced weed, if you could get a hold of me right away, I'd be very interested.
Yeah, it's a bunch of bullshit. I've been in many council meetings too, and people have tried to say that.
Yeah,
the earth is flatter than fentanyl is in weed. How about that?
I hope and pray so, but they've been putting it in cocaine and meth.
They've been putting it in pills. That's not the point.
That's more likely, yeah.
That makes sense. It makes no sense to put it in cannabis.
No,
it doesn't
I
work.
wouldn't smoke anything that had white stuff sprinkled on it.
And it probably would. I mean, yeah, it would not be a desirable product anymore. It would then be like more expensive than what you could probably get. I don't understand how fentanyl works.
And I'm not sure that you can smoke that fentanyl.
No, I'll tell you this. Many people may not know what we're talking about. The Michigan Marijuana Regulatory Agency last week issued a warning to consumers of cannabis over the holiday season about the potential for fentanyl-laced cannabis to be found in the unregulated marketplace. The fact is, when you read that, and I clicked on it and read the whole thing because that's what I do, and it only cites one case from Connecticut where they don't actually know that there was fentanyl in the cannabis, but there was a fentanyl overdose and cannabis was the only thing around, so they're making the correlation. So in this instance, with indirect evidence and nothing from any surrounding states, no clear trail of danger headed towards us along the interstates, right? This is just more fear mongering. And
it's reefer madness. It's 1920s, 1930s reefer madness. The only thing missing is the racism. That's the only thing missing here.
Yeah. No, and of course it's just a warning. It's not a prohibition. It's not any kind of a sanction or anything else either.
And
However, it shouldn't
they
even
did
be out
point
there.
out, interesting enough, though, they did point out that it would be in the unregulated system, that they appear to have no fear in the regulated system of fentanyl ending
Because
up
it's
in the
tested.
product.
Because it's tested prior to consumption. So,
But it's not tested for fentanyl prior to consumption.
I don't really know that. Whether
It's
it's
not.
correct or not.
That's not one of the tests we do in cannabis testing.
It's not a normal contaminant, so they don't look.
Right.
I don't think they look out for it. I think you look
Well,
out
with
for
a mass spec, though, a mass spec should be able to give you identification on all of the ridges and hits.
They're only looking for certain things.
Okay. Well, that's so. In other words, yeah, we were really disappointed to see this. This fentanyl thing has just been ridiculous. And I agree with you all. This has gone across the United States. The police department networks spread this information from place to place, and they don't ever need any evidence to back it up. Just one of my blue buddies from back east said this sometimes happens, so I want you all to be aware of it. That's all they need in order to start a rumor about this. It's completely dangerous to the cannabis industry.
I heard this talking to Europeans while I was in Amsterdam, that they've heard that fentanyl's put on American weed because they've read the news stories.
Yeah, because all you do is read headlines. If you scan the headlines and that's as deep as you get,
Right.
you believe it. I don't know.
It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate.
It is. Well, and it's just more evidence as to why we need to continue to be involved when it comes to cannabis law reform. And when it comes to being involved with cannabis law reform, that also includes celebrating our cannabis law reform heroes, including Mr. Sinclair. And I know we've got Mike Whitty on to talk specifically about an event coming up.
Well, there's a super event at the Ralston building this Friday that I'll be at with great enthusiasm for the 40th anniversary of
50th.
of the Crisler Arena. Free John Sinclair. Gail and I were there, and I was tripping on acid for the concert. And
Yeah, we were. Confirmed.
Vivid reminders that have stayed with me. The Bobby Seale talk, Allen Ginsberg, Commander Cody, John Oko Lennon, and Stevie Wonder coming in from the 20 grand after his show that night. Many other.
And of course, Commander Cody just passed away, unfortunately.
Yes, and he was close. John was close to him and a big fan of his, and I was, the man, John Sinclair, led me out of the East Side ghetto that I was raised in into liberation and freedom through his advocacy, not only of cannabis, but his advocacy of social justice, the White Panthers, the Rainbow People's Party, and a form of hippie activism that we need more of in this day and age. That's why I'm so fond of Adam. He personifies that tradition perfectly to me, as a genuine rascal from the old days. So thank you, Adam, for everything you've been doing. And not to sell Jamie or Rick short here, they're like the Walter Cronkites of our generation. So we're grateful for you guys.
Less rascally. Okay.
I've been taught by the best.
Yeah, it should be a wonderful night. Anyone listening that can make it, it's part of your life journey. It's part of a special part of your life. So get in touch with Jamie.
Only a few tickets left. So if you want to do that, seriously, do it very soon.
Yeah. But you got a cap on the number of people you can fit in that place too, don't you?
And we went even less than that, just out of having a little bit more space available.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And those tickets are on Eventbrite. I bought mine today. Yep. So.
Right. And later they'll open that wonderful old dive bar, the Stonehouse, across the street, and start blues in there. They may have Harmonica Shaw and Howard Glazer playing some blues. The Blues Scholars with Jeff Grand are performing. So if you love blues and you like that old time feel of the 60s, you can't beat Friday night, this Friday the 10th, to come on down and have a great holiday celebration. See your old friends.
Yeah, so I think Jeff is going to play some guitar with John. I do believe that is the case. And a trio from Flint, led by Steve Boone, who's a great keyboard player. Who's going to be their band that John likes a lot. And I think Steve also played with, toured with the Larry McRae band for a while after Sean McDonald was, left. So looking forward to it. And then we're going to have our food catered by Mr. A Million, which is A Million Wings is the name of his catering service. And they've got a lot of good stuff. So,
And frankly, having gatherings in the flesh helps hold us together. Zoom has worked to keep it going, but boy, I would love to see music used for fundraising more and make more of our fundraising more fun and have different styles of music. But come spring and summer, outdoor nice fundraising concerts for the election cycle and drawing more young people in and letting us old timers be elders and guides and inspiration. But intergenerational movement is needed to carry this whole agenda forward into higher consciousness and something even more striking than we've managed to accomplish in our lives. That the young ones, our kids and grandchildren, they're going to carry it on, hopefully to victory.
Well, we've certainly given them a good field to start from, but I mean, it'd be nothing if we didn't have people like John Sinclair to kick us off. Yeah. Really, you're talking about a case historically that was news around the world, 10 for 2. And then of course, afterwards, there was the whole issue of the bombing too, with the White Panthers. So John's case was very high profile. And after it was resolved, it actually removed all laws against cannabis possession and use in the state of Michigan for a short time.
One thing I would point out that a lot of people don't know is that the sentence of 10 years for 2 joints was not uncommon. That was the standard sentence at the time, was a 10-year sentence for possession. Sales. And there were a bunch of other guys that got the same sentence at that time in that era. And when John overturned the law, he wasn't the only one that was released. There were others that were released. Now, John's problem was, and the reason that the concert took place, John's problem was that they wouldn't give him an appeal bond. So most of the time you're convicted, you then can file an appeal. They make you post a bond, and you don't have to sit in prison while you're appealing your case. But they wouldn't give John an appeal bond. And that's when the concert was put together. Mind you, he served 2.5 years at this point. But the concert was put together, and it was broadcast on PBS in Detroit. I wasn't there. I'm too young for that. But guys were going on at 2:00 in the morning. The show was still going. It was an all-nighter, and it was something like had never seen before. And then 3 days later, they gave John an appeal bond and let him out. At which point he was able to fight his case from the outside and make the change.
Jamie, it strikes me that we should be sure that Buck Davis comes Friday night, because he was his attorney and got him the Supreme Court victory, which was a precedent-setting civil liberties victory, as Adam says, with significant implications to other case law. Yeah, Buck Davis.
So the first industry association is called the Michigan Association of Compassion Centers, and we met for a couple of years, I think, pretty solidly, and kind of had to dissolve at one point. We're going to be joined by Paul Tylenda and we had a meeting in Ann Arbor one time, and Denny Hayes was showing up regularly to the meetings for a while, and he brought Buck Davis with him one time to introduce him to the group, to the board that we had meeting there, and that was pretty cool. And that was a nice history lesson that day too, because obviously they talked about what was going on back then, and that was a while ago itself. Now
that was a while ago. Man.
So we are awaiting the legend himself. And Paul, I'm sure, are you aware of the 50th anniversary for the 50th Freedom Rally coming up this weekend?
I'm familiar. I'll be out of town, unfortunately, but yeah.
So one thing I'm gonna check on John here soon because he should be coming on any minute now. But you were on like the last 3 or 4 shows in a row. We were talking about what's developing with the lab scenario with Viridis and their complaint, and now we have a ruling. So I think it would be kind of fitting if you or give us some resolution a little bit. If we get your perspective.
That ruling was weird, right?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, the judge, the chances that you see the judge split the baby it doesn't happen too often, but I'll give the judge credit for this. In order to get to essentially a decision regarding 2 separate entities, he made a decision for each. And through his tough line of questioning and through even, let's just say, what the MRA put forth and what Viridis had put forth, it allowed the judge to essentially distinguish between the MRA's actions against each location. And the MRA, it seemed like the problem is the MRA was treating them interchangeably, or at least mistaking or attributing the mistakes of one to the other. And I give the judge credit for slicing the issue thin enough to be able to make the distinction to say, yes, Bay City was doing things appropriately. So there must have been enough of an analysis getting into what was done, what was being alleged wasn't done, what was accomplished with that testing, and how the testing in Bay City was done compliantly, versus what they're saying, okay, well, if you saw all of this in Lansing, then Lansing is still shut down based off of the lack of certainty as to their compliance with the, let's just say, safe medicine. So I guess I applaud the judge for slicing it that thin, because when you have a decision that's essentially has 2 heads in the same coin, it's hard to say that the judge, A, wasn't paying attention, B, was being biased towards one side or the other, or C, wasn't really looking for a solution, right? Whereas in this one, the judge, again, for him to find the distinction to the 2 laboratories, I think is credit to the Viridis attorneys for drawing that distinction, right? And it might be, let's just say, part of the problem of regulation to where maybe the MRA doesn't have a good grip on the distinction between the 2. Maybe they don't have the notes to distinguish between the 2, or maybe it's just the overburdened regulators weren't communicating clearly enough to create enough of the pattern to say that each location in and of themselves were participating in a bad testing scenario. But the question about this is, and this is I'd love to get some feedback on this, but the question is, now what? So does Viridis say, okay, Bay City, just sail on and keep doing what you're doing and you're fine without us? And they go in the Lansing and say, how do we bring our mop and bucket in Lansing to clean this up? More importantly, how do they clean the PR?
So, Paul, the weird thing is they mandated all the product back to the shelves, even if it's failed the microbial test, which is in itself against the rules.
Right. Which might mean that the implication of the finding is that that material did not, in fact, fail testing.
Well, I saw someone post on Facebook who's from one of the labs that said that all of those that failed testing were still held up in metric and couldn't be transferred because there was a failed test in the system for them.
So
even though the recall was released, that they were still being not shipped out. So
okay, so to me, that's a semantic difference between the holds were then released off of the medicine or the meds out of Bay City. And because the holds were released does not mean that the tests were passing. So it was the holds were released. So then ideally they could go test and get back into the system.
So people should know that about 27% of the retests, according to what we heard in court, 27% of the retests failed upon being returned. That's what the attorney said in the Court of Claims itself. So those 27% would still be on hold, but the remainder of that would be released, at least if they had been previously tested from Viridis Bay City. Now the Viridis Lansing, everything is still on hold, my understanding. So you're looking at 75% of Viridis Bay City going back. Go ahead, Adam.
But those numbers are kind of skewed because if you didn't send your product back for retesting,
right?
And if you're smart, you didn't. You wait until the last minute. I mean,
I personally would just smoke it.
Recommended to his clients to wait.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what educated people do. They play the game.
Well, those people that really were hurt by this wanted to try and recoup their loss as quickly as possible. So the goal of theirs was to rush it to testing as quickly as they could. Now, those that apparently were more, sluggardly or were following Adam's advice and weren't doing it quite quickly enough, they may not have to retest. And we can assume, I think it's fair to assume that 27% of all that non-retested stuff is just as bad as the 27% of the tested stuff.
If not more, because they knew.
So now you're looking at intentionally sending, or maybe not intentionally, I think that's the wrong term, but knowingly sending perhaps 27% of bad product back to the shelf. I don't know that I'm glad I'm not anybody making decisions in this deal, because it doesn't sound like there's any right way to do it, but this certainly does not look like a right way to do it.
And it creates a regulatory problem too, because if the MRA says, okay, fine, that material is suitable for sale and we deem it to be shelf ready, and someone has a reaction.
Paul,
there he is.
Paul was describing reactions, and we heard in the Court of Claims that Clara Patterson did say that there had been some reports of
18
interactions
complaints
from these from the recalled material, including she mentioned hospitalization. So those are not my words; those are hers.
Yeah.
So far, that investigation has led nowhere, because if it had, they would have immediately released information about it. I mean, that's the glaring thing. When I heard hospitalizations, I was waiting to hear a patient name. I mean,
I'm sure it's going to be difficult for there to be a causation between cannabis and somebody getting that.
No, but again, they have a system of reporting. So if there are adverse reactions, then they report them in, whether they're substantiated or not. And if you get enough of them, I'm sure they hit a tipping point and it triggers action of some kind. It seems like multiple reports from a single thing would be the triggering action.
And this goes back into possibly a product liability issue, that if the state has said, no, that product is okay to go back on the shelf, and it ends up not being, does that approval through the MRA cut off any liability for product liability towards the growers or even the testing labs?
The nice thing about all of this is that the metric tag tells you where a product was tested. So if you have any concerns about Viridis Labs, you can put that product back on the shelf when you pick it up and read that label.
Yep. And you can ask your bud tender before you make that purchase too. Go ahead, Jamie.
Well, before it gets too much longer, we have been joined by the legendary John Sinclair. We were kind of finishing up an issue. Okay.
All of you guys, like myself, we've been smoking weed a long time. How many times have you had weed there was something wrong with it?
Never.
Zero.
Nope.
What does this shit mean?
I've had shitty weed, though.
Yeah, shitty weed. You got by the side of the road.
I pick grasshopper legs out at times. I find little stones in my bags back in the cartel
What does all
days,
this
right?
shit mean? What does it mean? I don't get it.
Yeah.
I'm still healthy.
It's industry, John. That's all it is. It's industry. It has nothing to do with reality. I've been saying this for a while, John. We've been testing weed by machine for 20 years. We've been testing weed using the human body for thousands of years.
Thousands.
There are no bodies stacked up. There is no damage.
No problems.
And these people are totally 100% disingenuous when they bring that nonsense, because there is no truth to it.
What does it mean?
It's reefer madness. It means nothing. It literally means nothing. I mean, you know.
I don't get it. I've been following this as closely as you can follow anything. I don't fucking get it.
Yeah. Well, they
I
said
know that when you got some state cops running the fucking testing, there's something drastically wrong.
And
This
for those
should
that
never
don't,
be permitted. There's no way in the world this should be permitted. How do they get away with this shit? State cops testing the fucking
Getting away with
weed.
too much for too
Kiss
long.
my ass.
It's probably why they thought they could just do this too.
the blue stormtroopers, right? You know,
Jesus Christ.
there's still the gauntlet. You still don't want to drive up I-75 up by Gaylord. You still don't want to have a joint going in your hand if you go up through there. Paul's nodding his head. He knows. Yeah, I mean, it's 2021, motherfuckers. Leave us alone. Okay?
Get out.
That was not sign language. It was just me pretending I know sign language. I did not. So
Right.
I hope nobody got their head twisted around that. But
You can't teach old dogs new tricks, right?
you know,
And all
there's-
those cops, that's all they know.
I'm still a believer that we need to
can.
fight back.
Yes.
And
Well, you know, there's been a
I'm
barrage.
I'm not calling for any violence or anything. I mean, I think we should, you know, turn around is fair play. So when they come at us with their jackbooted thugs, we should have steel doors in place. Fuck you. The point is that here's a guy that did bad shit when he was a cop. Now he's in our industry and he's doing bad shit. He needs to be exposed for that, for all of it.
And imprisoned.
well, I don't know if the penalties for violating lab rules include imprisonment. Paul Tylenda, probably not, right?
No, I mean it's going to be, and that's what I was just about to bring up, is that I'm now still very curious to see how the MRA reacts. What's the penalty? Because there's going to be a penalty for, well, and now it'll be reserved to Lansing, but there'll be a penalty for that. There'll be some kind of fine or some kind of slap that they'll have to take. Hopefully it's enough.
Well, they talk about having originally $229 million worth of product involved in this particular recall. I think that's kind of an inflated press release number. It looks like they took the average retail value, maybe added a little bit onto it, and then multiplied it out by some stuff. But it was about 64,000 pounds worth of material. That's 32 tons of cannabis. I mean,
Jesus Christ.
I know, John. That's a lot of recall, right?
That's a lot of weed.
Yeah, that's a
It's
lot.
a lot
Of
of pre-rolls.
But part of what isn't being talked about, because it's not part of the case, is how come those people were testing that percentage of our industry? And there's a reason for that. And so far it hasn't been mentioned here. And I'll mention it.
It's the
It's
cheating
because they were
potency.
juicing the numbers.
Yeah.
And if you wanted better test results, you went to them.
You went to the
Everybody
coppers.
knows that.
So the THC content, of course, directly translates into marketability of product, and a higher THC content is highly desirable. Even the difference of 1, 2, or 3% in your score can make the difference between a consumer making that purchase or not. So we really try to discourage people from shopping lab to lab in order to get the best test results. But in November of 2020, Viridis developed their own system of testing for THC content,
Which
They
could
call
be
it-
completely valid, by the way. It should, even though it gets higher numbers, there's not like this universal standard that can be relied on. So it's not
It
like you're
could be if it was
necessarily-
approved by the state and it made
Yep,
sense.
The fact is, though, this is what happened after November 2020. Their numbers jumped right up, scientific or not. None of us are lab techs. We can't say. But what I will say is, if you see numbers jump up after a new product has been released, and then of course everybody goes to them, it's now the sought after testing facility because they deliver the juiced numbers, as Adam
They
said.
don't have failures on microbials,
Well-
and they have higher THC numbers. That's
Yep,
that's a good point.
exactly. So,
Sometimes higher by 10%.
Yeah, that's true. And if I read up all of the descriptors of the Viridis method that were included in the lawsuit, and they were all economically based. They were like a highly marketable product that delivers the best possible results on the market, takes into account the entire full spectrum of the THC molecule. And maybe scientifically, those things are correct. I don't know whether they are or they are not, but it seems like snake oil sales.
Well, they also mentioned that they were artificially bumping the number because they knew that they were comparing it to product on the street that wasn't being tested. So they were, I mean, their system just.
Yeah. So, clearly that's why you get one company with two labs. By the way, there's about 19 licensed labs for medical and 17 licensed labs for adult use in the state of Michigan, according to the Court of Claims hearing. And if you take out those two labs, which are licensed for both, that still leaves about 15 other labs. So if Viridis is claiming they have about 60% of the testing market, and there are still 15 other labs splitting the 40% that's left over, you do have to wonder, how does that happen? And is it happening because one is having an unfair advantage over the rest? And I think we can certainly point to it.
The police.
Yeah. They don't care. They don't think they have no consequence, John. No consequence.
They ran it in the illegal days, and they're running it now. The same rotten motherfuckers.
Well, I don't really care so much about.
It makes me so angry when I learned that this was a police-operated facility and they had 60% of the fucking market. You feel like you're on Mars.
Well, it's worse than that when you know all the shit that they did while they were at the labs.
Right. Yeah. They were bad cops.
We know too well what they did. We followed them for years.
And for those who don't know, when we talk about at the labs, there was a scandal at the Michigan State Police Crime Lab where the principals in this particular company hail from, which involved creating
the same exact guy.
Yeah, that exact guy, right? Yeah, they created test results that were favorable to the prosecution. That instead of saying
unknown origin,
was of organic,
in every instance.
Yep, they said it was of unknown origin, which allowed prosecutors to charge people and felonize them instead of having being forced to release
under the synthetic cannabis laws.
Under the K2
destroyed thousands of lives by doing that.
What do you think they're doing now?
Yeah.
What about these poor motherfuckers that got a dispensary and they come and take all their weed?
Yeah.
What kind of shit is that?
Yeah. We've talked before, too. Some of the cannabis is owned, retail stores will purchase it outright from a producer and put it on the shelves. And sometimes it's put on the shelves on consignment where, it's still owned by the cultivator. So the pain is spread throughout the entire industry. There's a variety of people that get hurt by this. It's not
what do you say, 32 tons?
Yeah, 32 tons, 64,000 pounds.
That's a lot of people fucked up.
Now that they've taken half of that away, I mean, you can drop that number in half, but half of a fantastic number is still a pretty fantastic
tons. And what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt.
There you go. I knew that was coming.
So here in Michigan, I mean, we got a pretty good thing going with our unregulated market, and we always have. So it always behooves us to make sure that we have as many options available to us as possible. And that, as I've always said, the regulated market is an option to me. It is not a requirement for me to use. I have a caregiver that works with me. I have the ability to trade or to be gifted cannabis from anybody else. And because I've got a patient card, I can go buy cannabis from an alien in an Elvis costume in the middle of Broadway Avenue. And I will not suffer any legal consequence because I'm allowed to acquire my cannabis from any source for my medical needs.
As long as you keep the 2.5 ounces or under. Yeah.
Yep, exactly. And I can never afford more than that anyway.
First of all, if you have more than 2.5 ounces, you grew it yourself because the law allows you to do that and keep it all. So it's a different mindset we're living in nowadays, folks.
I want to see a bonsai cannabis plant. You know what I'm saying? One of those small, little, tightly controlled.
See a green method.
Be great.
And up to 5 ounces for an adult 21 and over is still a civil infraction ticket.
Sure. So, hey, John, I know your time is valuable, and Mike Whitty was on talking about how he was at your Freedom Rally 50 years ago.
On acid with Gail.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mike.
Hi, John. Yeah, I remember that column in the Free Press where you were my hero when I was a young man. And so
Me and Dave DeBuscher.
yeah, with Dave DeBuscher, the basketball star at our high school, who went on to the Pistons and the Knicks. So I had
Only time I've ever been coupled with Dave DeBuscher.
yeah, John Sinclair and Dave DeBuscher, two Michigan guys who made their mark. A salute to you, John. And what a night that was with people like Bobby Seale.
Wish I could have been there.
Boy, Stevie Wonder, Commander Cody.
I was listening from my bunk in the penitentiary.
Wow.
Yeah,
4 o'clock
John,
in the
I got a
morning.
question for you. When you made the phone call to the event, was that did they arrange that in the prison, or was that during a open yard?
No. Peter Andrews arranged that.
So that was all right.
You see, I have been elevated to a privileged position in the farm, what they call the farm system. You remember that? And they took me out of the 5 block where I'd been all the time I'd been there, the what do you call it, isolation ward, high security, and they put me in a cabin with the other characters and a job out there. So I forget what the point. What's the point?
We were talking about the phone call that Peter Andrews set up.
Okay. So part of my enhanced status was that on every Friday night I get to call my wife. I had 2 children. One of them was born when I was in prison. I had 2 baby girls. So this was a big upset for me because I got to talk to my wife every week. Otherwise, I had to drive over from Ann Arbor to Jackson. So Peter Andrews arranged this call so that the number would, when you answered it, would be in the auditorium. I don't know how he did it. Way over my head. But that's what happened. So, and then they called the prison and they said, when Sinclair calls his wife this Friday, she'll be at this number. So that's all that happened. And then the thing was, I'm sitting there in a room with the phone. In the next room, there's 2 guards. And that's why I sound so nervous. I'm thinking they're going to bust me. I was terrified out of my fucking wits, putting myself in the hole. But I said, I got to do this. This is a once-in-a-lifetime thing. I got to do this if it means doing the rest of my time in the hole.
So what'd you talk about, John, when you made that phone call?
Well, I was just trying to talk about anything. I was terrified out of my wits. I was shaking. You can hear it in the fight. It always takes me back to, I'm sitting right there shaking when I hear that phone call. And then I'm watching these guys and they're watching the fucking baseball game. They aren't even listening in on the phone. And then I relax and start talking. You remember that, Adam?
Yeah.
It's like 2 different guys.
Yeah, the beginning of the phone call is pretty
Terrified out of my wits.
You can tell.
I'm already in the fucking, I just got out of the semi-hole. You know,
Is that recording in like the movie or the documentary?
It's in the movie, yeah. It's in the 10 for 2 movie. I would tell everybody you can probably find 10 for 2 on YouTube if you look.
It's on YouTube.
It's on YouTube. It's worth watching. The music is fucking awesome.
Yeah. It's a great documentary.
Yeah. Done by Steve Gephardt, the late Steve Gephardt.
Yep.
So after you calmed down, though, John, what kind of message did you give to that huge auditorium full of people?
I don't know. It's on tape. I don't have to remember. It's on tape.
Okay. Fair enough. Words of wisdom and inspiration, I am sure. Mike, we could ask Mike what he remembers, but he was on Sid, so I don't know.
Well, I remember it vividly because I was so focused. And you know, Allen Ginsberg comes up there, John Lennon, Commander Cody, Stevie Wonder, and all of that. and SRC.
No,
Gee whiz.
no, I see.
Even Father Groppe from Milwaukee,
Yeah.
a civil rights priest of the era. And
What do you remember of John's phone call, though, Mike?
Well, I remember his mother was connected to that call too, right? Your mother, was she on that call? John?
She was there.
Was there.
Yeah. So somehow
She said hi, I believe.
I associate her with
My ex-wife, they talked together on the microphone.
Yeah. Well, you had the moment of focus that was going to lead to a national tour with John Lennon, and the FBI got in there and tried to harass him and ban him from the country and kick him out.
That was later. Yeah, that was later.
Well, the thing about this show was that the lineup was the who's who. These were all the major players, either locally or on a national.
Well, they were all the major players we could get.
Right. Well, yeah.
And John Lennon kind of
most
being
of
there
them were
helped out.
friends of ours.
right.
And when we counted it up, the ones that were friends of ours couldn't draw 3,000. And we had 15,000 seats. So we were terrified. And then Jay Rubin called and said John Lennon was coming. And we announced that, and the tickets were gone in 3 minutes. They were the fastest selling tickets in Michigan history up to that point.
Man.
$3, the stupidest thing I ever did in my life. We had a $3 ticket, and then we got John Lennon, and they said, man, we had to raise the tickets to $10. And I said, oh, no way. If we would have did that, my whole life would have been different. We would have got out of prison with some money, because we didn't make any money on this thing. You know.
Well, John, Adam Brook earlier this evening told us that 3 days after the concert, they released you. Is that
Exactly
accurate?
correct.
Yes. So, I mean, didn't raise a lot of money, but secured your freedom, don't you think?
Right. But I'm just saying, you'd think it was 15,000 people that you would have raised some money, but you
With an extra $5 each, that'll help you out, right?
Oh, Jesus Christ. That would have been all profit.
I get you.
Because we had to pay for all those groups to get there, see?
So we talk a lot about things like the US Festival and the, Farm Aid and things like that. But this really was one of the first, if not the first of its kind, with a cannabis theme, right, John? Because that's really what this was.
Cannabis theme, yeah.
Yeah.
It was the second big benefit like this. I think George Harrison had the one for Bangladesh.
Right.
Yeah.
I think that preceded this.
What a company to be spoken of in, right?
Oh, yeah. John Lennon, George Harrison. At the top of the charts.
Yeah, but humanitarians too, both. You look at
Great, well, I'd say great Americans, but they weren't Americans.
but
They're
Great.
humanitarians.
that's right.
Great humans.
Yeah.
So, how excited are you for the 50th anniversary celebration coming up, John?
Well, I'm relatively excited. If we were back in Crisler Arena with Stevie Wonder, I'd be more excited.
I think that's true.
There you go. We got to think big for the coming days. It's in that spirit, John.
We had to think small for this one because that was the only venue that was really within our reach.
Yeah,
Right.
and John, you got Steve Boone coming down, and you're a fan.
Steve Boone, he plays for me in Flint.
Yeah, and he's coming down for this event.
Yeah, he's a great player. I'm going to do a set with him.
Right on.
Well, you and our generation pioneered the use of music in politics. And we've always found a few national stars who had the guts to get their hands dirty with politics. We could restore that and do some more big time concerts and big time fundraising with music. Culture is our strong suit. We are no longer just a counterculture. We're reshaping how people think about living with cannabis. That changes consciousness and opens the heart. We've got something that the world badly needs.
I think music and cannabis have been associated since before Western civilization. even occurred. You're talking about back with the Scythians. You can imagine these giant
Talking about
yeah.
ragas.
And the back with the advanced lost civilizations.
Yep, throwing these piles
Atlantis.
onto a thing, wafting the smoke
All
in
right.
there while drums are going, and yeah.
You're
But if
talking
you're
about
really-
India.
Well, East Asia, yeah, Scythians. So
Well, India, they had the weed and the sitars
yeah,
and the improvisation. You know that raga music is improvised.
and culture that
They've been doing
precedes
that
our
for
Western
2,000
culture.
years.
Mhm.
I would
They're
tell
high as goats. How high do you think Rabbi Shankar was when he was playing that fucking sitar? He was higher than we've ever been.
I would tell viewers and listeners that if they're interested in American weed culture, that one of the best stories, best books to read is Really the Blues by Mez Mesro.
Amen.
That I mean, I got it right here. It's on my bookshelf, so I pulled it up. But if you want to get into American music and weed culture,
That
this
turned
book
me
is
on.
it. Told by a
That
white
turned me
Jewish
on,
kid.
Adam.
Huh?
That was where I got my interest from.
There you go.
Wow. Okay.
And
It's a
On
nice
the Road
endorsement.
by Jack Kerouac. When On the Road came out, they put marijuana on Main Street for the first time.
Right.
That book there was a cult item. Because who gave a fuck about Mez Mesro, some Jewish clarinet player, you know?
Right. Jack Kerouac.
But Kerouac had a hit book when it came out in September of 1957 when I was in the 10th grade.
Well, a lot of people don't realize that marijuana
It hit
was
like
hidden.
an atomic bomb.
Right. A lot of people in today's culture have no concept that marijuana was underground, was hidden, was people were fearful to possess it and smoke it. You know,
You went to prison for it.
right.
They trained
and it was
dogs
no
to
joke.
hunt you down.
Because
Come
these
on.
guys like the guys
They
in this
trained dogs
fucking
to hunt us.
laboratory.
Right.
They put you in prison for this shit.
Yeah. Yep.
Let's say it in so many words. They put you in prison, took all your shit, tarred you with a brush that will carry throughout your entire life. And then they made it worse.
Right.
Compared to 50 years ago, 10 years ago, it was worse. Because they were taking you off the roll of government housing.
Right.
They were taking your government support money.
Your college money.
They wouldn't let you into the college.
Right.
Or the military, or any place, or
Well, that was a
employment.
drug.
Again, they
That was a
destroyed
big
tens
plus
of
they
thousands
wouldn't
of
let you in
lives.
the military. Who wants to go in the motherfucking military?
Well, anybody that does,
Bloodthirsty gun.
that's
toting
up to them.
freaks.
But it was an option taken away because of cannabis use. Yep. So it was a penalty that our people suffered unnecessarily.
It was not one that I suffered.
Yep. Me neither.
I suffered a lot, but I didn't ever suffer that one.
No. Go ahead, Jamie.
No, no,
I
go ahead.
did anything I could think of to stay out of the motherfucking military.
So, John, after you got out, you were able to, as Adam described it, you were able to fight from outside the walls instead of having to fight from inside the walls. So, what
Right.
kind of an advantage was that to you to be able to freely associate with your attorneys and work with other people instead of being under the jail, the prison rather?
Well, it was better, but I mean, I worked really hard when I was in prison. I worked on this every day. I wrote 7 single-spaced typewritten pages every day.
John wrote a book while he was in prison.
More than a book.
Well, yeah, but
Oh, you mean my book that I published?
A book
Right.
plus.
Yeah, but the letters. I'd love to publish some letters. They're all in my archive. But man, I ran the shit from the penitentiary like a gangster.
And part of the concept of the foundation is to keep all this type of stuff that we're talking about preserved. Part of
Yeah,
it.
perhaps one day we can publish those letters.
Yeah.
So
even after I'm gone.
prison was very different when John was in prison. The inmates actually ran the institution. They worked all the jobs. You were involved in media in the prison, weren't you, John?
No, I was locked up.
You didn't do any. I thought you had done some media stuff there.
No, I was all my own
Oh, all right.
machinations. No, I went to Marquette and I spent a year working in the laundry.
The laundry.
They wouldn't give me any work in the school or the paper or anything like that because they knew that I would distort it to my own needs, you know.
Yeah. Well, they deny you your most
In the
basic.
laundry, I folded laundry and delivered it to you. Thompson, 1, 2, 3, 5, 4, 7. Here's your bundle. And
Hey,
then
so,
when I went to Jackson, I never got out of isolation. I was always in 5 block.
Yeah.
I got out of there once to go to the hole for 38 days. But they would never, I never was in the big top in Jackson. Were you?
No, it doesn't exist anymore.
Oh, wow.
9 and 10 block is all that exists.
That was everything.
1, 2, and 3 block are quarantined with the hospital.
Right.
And
R&D.
and then 9 and 10 are part of Parnell, which is now a separate prison.
Parnell Correctional Facility, right?
No,
Yeah,
never heard of it.
It's off of Cooper Street. That's what they call that part of the prison because they don't use the whole yard anymore.
Wow.
When we were there to get
When
Michael
I was
Thompson,
there, it was the world's largest log prison.
Right.
in that area.
And they had like, what, how many? 4,000 people?
Yeah.
I can't remember. It seems like it rings a bell. And like Adam says, the inmates ran everything. The civilians were only there to tell the inmates what to do. And to have the guns.
Yep.
You never saw a gun in the course of daily life if you were proper, if you followed the rules. You never saw anything. You just went through. It's like going to work every day. That was their idea of straightening you out to get you used to going to work every day. The rotten motherfuckers.
Describe the hole, John. You just talked about.
I'm never going to work every day. I'm 80 years old and it's over now. I'm never going to work every day.
John, you mentioned you spent 38 days in the hole. Tell us what that's all about.
You just sit there.
It's a different cell. It's your own cell. What is it?
It's a hole.
Mm-hmm.
It's a certain cell block.
It's a location, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It's a location where they put you in there and then you just stay there until they let you out. You have no life in there. You know,
They bring you your food.
Talk to anybody else. You can't order anything. You got to sneak books in there.
Right.
No, it's terrible. It's a hole. You're deprived of everything. You're just a thug in a cell, you know.
What got you 38 days?
Trying to help some other prisoners with their appeals and shit, you know. Oh, wait. I think it was because I typed a copy of the Black Panther Party 10-point program for a guy. And he got busted with it. They sent my typewriter to the state police lab in Lansing to compare it with the... I said I wrote this. There wasn't nothing illegal about what I did.
Right.
So I said I wrote this, but they sent the tape where they wanted to get the proof.
Well, they like to play cops too, you know.
They are cops.
Right.
Yep.
They invented this shit.
You know, John,
Thousands of
we
years
got
ago.
you. We got you here. We've got Adam Brook from the Hash Bash. It only seems fitting that we bring on Charlie Strachbine from the Monroe Street Fair. What do you think? Let's add Charlie to this whole mix.
Charlie and I are all right now since he paid me my bad debt.
All right.
Charlie screwed me.
Pardon me?
I'm glad to say it to you right to your face. You fucked me. I came from
yeah, when and
Amsterdam
how?
for your
I
event.
take offense to
You
that.
beat me out of half the money.
John, you make these arrangements with other people and you bring it in public.
You ain't even going to apologize?
First of all, I'm not even sure what you're accusing me of because we discussed this before. Somebody with Globe made a deal. I was ready to pay you cash, and Kotar says, don't worry, it's all taken care of. Kotar, ask Kotar. Anyway, I brought you a whole bunch of cannabis after that. I'm really shocked I have to be defensive about this, John. The last 2 or 3 times we paid you.
You can imagine how I feel. I came from Amsterdam to be part of your event. And I got
Pardon?
How do you think I felt? You don't even say you're sorry.
John, I'm sorry. I'm not really sure I understand. We paid you at least $1,000 the last 2 times, unless Ben Horner took 500 and gave you 500.
No.
I don't even know. Why are you bringing this up on television here, John?
Well, because it's the first time I've ever had a chance to confront you with this.
Oh, you don't have my email? You saw me at the events when we gave you $1,000 at the booth to
If
Ben
somebody
Horner.
fucks me, they're the last person I'm going to write a letter to, motherfucker. What are you talking about?
John, I didn't fuck you.
Well, it was somebody
Guys,
else I went to?
Yeah, I'm sorry. We kind of arranged this.
I had no
conflict.
idea.
I unwittingly
No.
didn't realize that there was this kind of tension.
I
This
didn't
probably is
either.
a conversation. This probably is a conversation for private channels, gentlemen. And John, I'm not trying to step on your feet. I'm not at all. And I'm not trying to silence you, but I think probably
It's all the same life.
John, what event has paid you $1,000 in the last 2 years from
You want a
Detroit?
list? What are you trying to tell me? I'm nothing except
John,
for
we
you.
paid you. I don't know why you're coming at me.
Get this guy off
paid
here. Jesus
paid
Christ.
you.
I get paid all the time, motherfucker. I'm 80 years old. I've been doing this all my life. I never
Well,
had a job.
For a half hour, we paid you $1,000, and that seemed fair. You accepted.
Well, the doctors last year paid
Guys,
me $5,000. How's that?
Well, you accepted
I
what
give
we
you a
paid
good
you, John.
price.
I don't know what you're complaining for.
at this point, guys, at this point, Charlie, I'm very sorry. It seems like this is the wrong episode for us to have you on. We'll have you on next week, okay, Charlie? I'm sorry, but I think that's probably the best thing to do right now in order to calm the situation. Okay, I'm sorry, but we'll just have to end your segment right now, and then we'll get you next week, Charlie. Sorry about that.
Did I do anything wrong?
No, I'm just saying I need to end this conversation at this point. In
All
order
right,
to keep
thanks,
the
John.
integrity of the
Thank
show.
you, everyone. That's why I
Okay.
came on.
All right, thanks, Charlie. Sorry about that. So, John, I'm not trying to silence you at all. I just wanted to get control of the situation here to what degree we can. So
Thanks.
we do have Andy McFarlane coming on in a little bit. You got beef with him too somewhere? Is that somewhere? Should I know
Hey,
about
so,
that in advance?
He pays, right? We
So
don't have
just to
beef
mention
with
in the midst, just in all fairness, one of the things we were going to talk to Charlie about was the fact that the Monroe Street Fair was recognized by Metro Times recently, and we'll bring that up more when we have him on again. But that's
man. The chief of police says you're a great guy. The Metro Slime. What do they know?
Well,
well,
you
we
know,
wanted to celebrate his 20 years a little bit, and
it is. It
There's a
did
guy
seem
who
like a
took
little
the
medical
hash
Monday
bash
to look
that
out
we
there all of a sudden.
started and turned it into a personal money pocket for him, Charlie.
Hey, you know what, John? Let's
Charlie's
focus.
doing it because there's too many people there.
Yeah,
It's no fun.
let's focus on
all the fun
moving
out of
forward.
it.
Let's focus on moving forward. That's okay. I understand. Emotions run high, and it's not something that you easily have a way to shut off, especially when you're finally venting about something that's been building for a while. But I think it's just best if we move on, though.
10 years.
Yeah.
Took
Well,
him 8 years to pay me back, you see.
That's a It's a long time for sure. And to hold something like that, I know it hurts. So, but we love you. We love you. We understand. We have to deal with Adam all the time, so we're kind of used to it.
Hey, I let John go off on this. I could have said all of that. I was well informed and I knew what was coming. But John said it best.
Thanks.
Yep. Well, John is his own best advocate when it comes to that. I'll say.
Well, I've been working with Adam for 25 years, and I enjoy it, and he's my representative.
So, Adam, I understand you're not going to be at the 50th anniversary because you are headed west, right?
I am. I'm leaving on Thursday for Santa Rosa, California. I'm going to the Emerald Cup.
Emerald Cup. Wow.
Yeah. I'm actually going. It's a business thing. I'm going to observe what they do. They are now a licensed event, and I've been invited and asked to participate in some licensed events, and I really want to go see how these guys have done it and turned it into the successful event that they have.
That's a great event at their state fairgrounds in Sonoma County, wine country, just north of the Bay Area. And with Adam scouting it, we could have a version of that with a consumption lounge as a nominal host. Kurt Gore has an application in for a consumption lounge in Hazel Park, and he's buying a hall. Adam, we could surely have an Emerald Cup in Michigan with a new name that fits Michigan and something that's realistic.
So here's the problem with all of this.
Yeah.
Personally, I don't think it'll work in Michigan. I don't think we could do what we need to do because I don't think we have enough resources, meaning we don't have enough companies that I could invite 40 or 60 to set up. And with this MCMA thing going on, I'm even more limited in who I can ask to come on board and sell product. So I believe that what we saw at the Riverside Park with the Canna Jam, I believe that that's the future of cannabis events in Michigan. I believe that
it's a very Michigan event too.
Right. I believe that the concept of
they took Adam out.
Well, I think the concept of bringing all these dispensaries together to then sell weed that you can go get from them anytime, it just doesn't sell, if you ask me. I don't think people really care. And we just don't have enough right now. If we have 100 dispensaries that are owned by different people, only 20% of those are going to get involved. That's not enough to do an event like that. They have hundreds.
You can't expect a year 1 Michigan event to imitate a year 20 Emerald Cup, right? I mean, let's start.
No. This is different, though. No, this is not year 20 because they weren't a legal event. These are now only licensees now.
Oh, wow. That is a huge difference, Adam. You're right.
And that's what I'm going to see is how they switched from a illicit event or a caregiver event, for lack of a better term, to a licensee event. Now, understand that in California, they got a lot more licensees. And that's just something that Michigan isn't, people talk to me about this all the time. Now, a consumption lounge is a different story. You can have a consumption lounge. But event-wise, where you're going to sell hundreds or thousands of tickets, that's tough here right now. And I'm not tooting my own horn, but I do put on the largest underground event in Michigan. And, when I sell 3,000 tickets over a weekend, I kind of have an idea that these other events that are selling 600, 700, 800 tickets, I know what they're up against, and I know why they're only selling that many tickets. And I'm trying my damnedest to keep doing a caregiver event. But at some point, I'll be honest, at some point they're going to come and say, you can't do this anymore. And I'll tell you how it works.
At the beginning.
We put a bunch of money aside so that if we have to hire a lawyer, there's money available. And I mean, I don't know when the state's going to send us a cease and desist letter or what. At least I hope that's the way they're going to do it.
I don't think so. I think a raid.
You know,
I think a raid on the premises is.
But Adam, correct me if I'm wrong. One year, the fire marshal was on premises. He said, "You know, you just got to move the way that you guys are going to blow glass, and then you're still cool." He knew exactly what you were doing. Still gave
the
his
fire
okay.
marshal. The fire marshal only enforces the fire code.
Yeah, but I mean,
and the fire marshal's a douchebag because he then went to the city and said something to the police.
Yeah,
and they don't care. But that's not the problem. I'm not worried about the city of Ann Arbor, and I'm not worried about Washtenaw County. You know, we put that kid in office, we can take him out. So the fact of the matter is that it's the state that I'm concerned about.
Yeah.
That kid you're referring to is Washtenaw County prosecutor, right?
Yes.
He's a great guy.
He's an excellent guy.
And he works with Victoria Burton Harris as associate prosecutor, and they are a super team.
She's fantastic.
Listen, this is the only prosecutor that I could possibly talk positively about.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm asking myself, why is he not prosecuting this?
Ellie Savitt, right.
What's he going to – here's my question.
He's great.
What's he going to do when he goes to get reelected and there's someone brings up you know, I don't know, human trafficking case or something that, you know, happened in Washtenaw County? I mean, this guy's pro not arresting people, but boy, some of these people are going to hang them out to dry on some of this stuff. And I just hope he can weather the storm because I love it.
I haven't seen any blemishes on his record so far, but you know, I don't live in Washtenaw, so I don't pay attention to the news there as closely as possible.
Hey, so
he's a good guy.
We are now joined by Andy McFarlane.
Hey,
and Gail.
how
John,
you guys doing?
you know your name is in the New York Times book review this Sunday? It's discussion about you and Lenny, and it doesn't even talk
Lenny's
about
book.
cannabis.
About Lenny's book.
Yeah.
Lenny's photography book.
It's got wonderful mention in the Times.
Friendly
Yeah,
review
nice.
in New York Times. Friendly.
New York Times book review. Very nice.
Yeah.
And you had a nice spread in the Free Press, Sunday's Free Press,
2 stories.
with a notice of the event Friday featured in
Yeah.
the story with the street address. That should help Jamie sell the place out. By the
I
end of the week.
appreciate
We got about 20 more tickets to sell.
I appreciate my name was mentioned in that article. I appreciate that.
I did my best.
I appreciate that. Also,
Joe LaPointe's a great writer. Remember him?
Yeah,
He was a leading sports writer.
I remember
He
him.
played papers, and then he went to the New York Times. And now he's retired, and he writes for the papers here for fun, you know.
About his friends.
This is the second one he's did for me, yeah.
Yes.
What a nice thing to be able to do.
Yeah, what a great guy.
Hey, we're going to bring in Andy McFarlane now. Andy is a principal at the MiCHIGO. Andy, I'm messing it up. It's a
MiCHIGO.
cannabis tourism company working to help people choose Michigan as their tourist destination because of our pot-friendly attitude, right?
Yeah, well, yeah. Thanks, Rick. Appreciate you guys having me here. Good to see you again, John. You're looking good. So it's actually MiCHIGO is the Michigan Cannabis Hospitality Industry Growth Organization.
Wow.
And yeah, it's huge, right?
Somebody must have smoked some hell of a weed to take that one up.
Yeah, definitely. There was probably a lot of weed smoking getting that acronym together. But it's actually a nonprofit organization. I am the vice chair.
Vice.
Yeah.
You're in charge of Vice, huh?
Yeah, second place, exactly. But yeah, so what we're doing is we're a group of people. Most of us are somehow affiliated with the cannabis industry. We've got, people from dispensaries, some people from, media organizations like My Michigan Cannabis Trail. Lisa, our board chair, is going to have a cannabis. It's not really a bed and breakfast in Ann Arbor, but it's going to be a pretty cool space. It's going to be some events. So we were all looking at the
We
land.
get people to come in so they have a place to smoke, huh?
Yeah, well, it's
you go to Colorado or somewhere.
Yeah,
you gotta find a place to smoke.
Yeah, that is a huge part of it, John.
You
know, we did this fall. We did our first cannabis tourism report, where we did some just kind of surveys. They weren't really scientifically selected surveys. Next year we're going to have a lot more behind it, but we wanted to get something out there to just start to get our arms around the size of what Michigan's looking at with cannabis tourism. And we asked people a whole bunch of questions, and one of the biggest things we found is what you identified right off the bat, John, is that there is just no place to smoke in Michigan. Right. So that is certainly something that we are hoping to provide resources. We
that's what the state has done. They've made it so they want marijuana to be some kind of fertile thing, so that you go and cop and you get out of there and you can't stick around and smoke. I hate that.
Yeah, and that
takes all the fun out of it.
Well, it's, as you well know, that's 180 degrees from the cannabis experience.
Exactly. 180.
Chill.
U-turn.
Yeah. So we did our first presentation at the Michigan Festivals and Events Conference, because, one of our biggest focuses is to normalize the use and enjoyment of cannabis in Michigan. I mean, it's a legal product, and I don't know about all of you, but my dad died from alcohol, and I have yet to meet a person who died from cannabis consumption.
You never will.
How were you received at that event with those people?
We were received very well. There was a lot of interest in our in the organization, in our session, and it definitely.
Nobody likes to say how many people smoke weed in Michigan.
Exactly.
The reason I asked
is they've had an event where we had to vote. It's always been over 60%. 67% of my fellow residents of Detroit voted for psychedelics just now. That's 2 out of 3.
Yep.
That completely destroys all their bullshit propaganda for 80 years.
Yeah, it's very much the case, and they're finding that across the country. Our report has a lot of data in it. We relied on a lot of data from Colorado, California, some other places. We also sort of drew some parallels between other tourists, like beer tourists and cannabis tourists. So we got a lot of those numbers in there. But as John says, it's very clear the arrow on cannabis use, on cannabis enjoyment, and on people looking to travel and enjoy cannabis is definitely pointing up.
Right, because otherwise you had to worry about getting stopped by the state police with your stash.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, truthfully, here, one of my thoughts, like, I was a bartender for years. Always hated the end of the night when you're managing people down to a level where you think they're good to drive. But I think that we all know the best thing to do after you smoke some weed is anything but drive.
Sit down.
So what we need to do,
Although I wouldn't think of driving without smoking a joint.
Exactly. I smoke much better, or drive much better.
Much better
after I've used some cannabis.
Rick, you muted.
And that's still not very good at that.
I was saying I smoke much better when I'm driving. I was imitating.
I do smoke better when I'm driving.
And that's also true. So yeah, just want to rub it in.
So yeah, so what we did is we did find what people were interested in looking to the future, and we found that pretty much across all age groups, staying at cannabis lodging or staying at a cannabis campground was a little bit less popular, but that was something that was popular across all the age groups. And then attending a cannabis festival or event was another really big thing. And the other things that people wanted to do are all social enjoyment sort of things. Consume cannabis at a consumption lounge, eat a cannabis infused meal, try an edible. It's people are, we're not at the state where it's go to the dispensary, buy some weed, and then go hide in a corner. We're at the state where
nobody wants to do that. It's against the idea of cannabis altogether.
Yeah, well, and it dovetails so nicely into so many of the assets that Michigan's already selling. I mean, if you look at Pure Michigan, like it's hard to find a Pure Michigan ad that you're like, oh yeah, I'd smoke a joint there. Michigan definitely has that, and so our challenge is to make the state attractive to cannabis travelers, because one of the things that California found when they did their study is that about half of the people, when they're looking for a destination to travel to, will consider whether or not they can get cannabis there. And it's just, at this point, it's
always. It's always a consideration because you got to get high.
Look, reciprocity has been a huge advantage to our system since the medical system came into being, because you can always go to a place and hit a guy up somewhere and find something on the low, but having a medical card and allowing people to come to Michigan to be able to use that privilege from another state, that set the stage for people already to come here. Andy, and I mean, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
I've tried to use my medical card in different states and they wouldn't recognize it.
Yeah, not everybody does.
Yeah, reciprocity is only in a few states. Yep.
Massachusetts.
And Andy, I'd love to tie in with you and give people a special underground cannabis tour in Detroit. We have a number of little underground, above ground venues that are novel, and I never saw them in San Francisco. I went looking for something like I had in Detroit, and I was tied into the West Coast Bay Area leadership network, and yet I never found a scene like some of our Detroit scenes. So we could give West Coast people a tour here. I call it Holiday in Detroit. We offer these people.
What do you got to say about Michigan is when we invented this culture 60 years ago, weed was at the heart of it, at the beginning.
Yeah,
we all smoke.
I mean, it's weed. We're definitely ground zero. And I think Mike hit on a whoa. All right, sorry, people are going in and out. Mike hit on a really solid point. I think that Michigan is. Oh, I'm sorry, John. I thought you were done talking. The connection's a little bit bad. Go ahead.
His connection got frozen. That's why there was a timing difference. It was actually nobody did anything. But go ahead, John.
I was saying something very important.
Right on, man. Keep it going.
Joe, forgive me for giving.
But go ahead, John. Finish up.
That distinction.
Right
I said when we started this culture, when we started having free concerts, when we started having rock concerts, weed was there from the beginning. It's always been there. It's at the heart of our culture. So that's one reason why they in Michigan, the events we used to have in Michigan, the John Sinclair Freedom Rally, they say people broke open pounds of weed on the floor and were rolling them up and passing them to joints. That was in the Michigan University basketball arena. So that's always been an important. I'm sorry, Andy, I didn't mean to get nasty, but
oh no, that's totally all right, man.
Even more than that, marijuana is at the heart of our culture. And that's
Andy, what was that Detroit angle you wanted to comment on? Can you remember that?
Well, my thought is when you look around the country and you say, okay, where is Weed City, USA going to be? Is it going to be Los Angeles? No, they've got a lot of other stuff going on. Is it going to be Vegas? Well, maybe, but I used to live in Vegas, and while weed is definitely going to be folded into that experience, I really don't think they're going to be able to do it like we could. And I think Detroit could be. I mean, it could be absolutely. You say what?
We're just enough special to pull it off. I go out to the West Coast and I call myself Dr. Detroit out there, and they respect it. That somehow I've never had any pushback for the nickname or any criticism. But we have a cachet. And, there was a Times piece, Detroit, the new Brooklyn. Detroit, the new Brooklyn. Honest to goodness. And artists are coming because the rents are cheap and they can get lofts in Detroit that they couldn't afford in Brooklyn.
Look, as soon as we authorize testing centers, testing locations in the city of Detroit, smoking rooms, whatever you want to call them, right next to where the casinos are, that's a winning combination. That's a destination location at that point, because we know how many people love to come to the casinos. They travel from great distance to come to Detroit's 3 huge casinos, all within about 1.5 miles of each other in downtown.
And we could toss in a hockey game or a baseball game. I might even live to see the day the Lions win the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yep.
So we got to track this.
Remember, 2 out of 3 Detroiters get high.
I think that's true.
That's a good start right there.
You're probably right,
Andy.
We can all go on the payroll of the Detroit Convention Bureau.
Demonstrated by our voting record. Nothing is more demonstrable than that.
Well,
that's the best poll. Right?
So beyond Detroit and the casinos and all those type of draws, what else do you think in Michigan would be a major hotbed of cannabis tourism going forward, Andy?
Flint.
I think so.
Well, I think you gotta look at the Great Lakes. I mean, you get out the beaches, like our West Coast. What was that, John?
Where's that coming
from? So I think, I think that definitely we'll see, the outdoor stuff. But I think that one other thing that a lot of people don't really recognize because they haven't lived, all over the country is that Michigan has the second most diverse agriculture in the country. So we have a really dynamic local food scene that's, it's almost unmatched, across the country. And I think that'll be a really, big part of Michigan's experience too, is just that we've got, one of the things that you find in our report is that there are more people living, there are more cities with 100,000 or more people within, I believe it's like a 2-hour drive of Detroit than any other metro area in the country. We have a lot of people.
Which is why you can do events in Detroit, but you can't do them in Grand Rapids, and you can't do them on the west side of the state, and even Flint gets a little far north because people won't drive in one direction, but they will drive in another direction.
Right.
The outstate people will all drive 2 hours to get to Detroit.
Right.
Detroiters will not drive 1.5 hours to get somewhere else.
Well, with the number of Indiana license plates I see in Detroit, they're willing to drive more than 2 hours because some of those guys are really hauling ass to get there. And from a state like Indiana, which doesn't have programs as generous as we have here, when they arrive in our state and see what we can do, I mean, Mr. Hash Bash, Adam Brook throws, the Hash Bash Cup, and that is the largest event of its kind in the state. Whole hotel takeover.
Hey, so Andy, when these guys bring up Flint, I think of the fact that there's a couple of the great clubs or centers.
Flint's in the vanguard.
And does that kind of stuff considered in your evaluation, or what might be attractive?
You can go to the GC3. There's 3 or 4 of them. You can go there and buy a joint, smoke it with your friends, hang out, have a coffee.
Yeah.
Just like
So, Jamie.
In Detroit, they won't even let us have a fucking dispensary.
Yeah, Detroit.
Hazel-
It's really hard to figure out what they're doing there. But
Well, let me-
Jamie,
Andy, let me tell you the
definitely.
secret of it. The
Oh.
secret is the city
Yeah.
council is made up of 3 ex-cops,
Yeah.
3 religious figures, and 3 social workers. Now we're going to have 6 different ones after this last election. We'll see what happens, but that's the pattern in Detroit.
Yeah.
The church people run all the shit.
2 of the new ones
That's why they threw away 20 years of revenue from casino gambling,
Right.
because the churches wouldn't let them have it.
2 of the
They
new
hate
council.
weed. The weed is the devil's implement. They hate it.
Yeah, we hope it's better because 2 of the new council members, Coleman Jr.
Yeah.
and Fred Durhall, both have been pretty reasonable
That's
while
cool.
in other elected capacities on this issue and in some conversations with people. They were both lawmakers. In fact, Coleman Coleman Jr. actually senator introduced a legalization bill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, his father was a very important backer of the marijuana change. When I was in prison, he used to let us use his office for our press conferences in Lansing, which was part of our fight back,
I never knew that. That is interesting.
He was always good to us, man. He was him and Basil Brown.
Basil Brown.
Highland Park, and they arrested him. Basil Brown, they sent a prostitute in with some weed, and then they arrested him for getting
Set him
some
up.
pussy and getting high. I want a senator who gets high and gets some pussy, please.
Yeah, no victim, and you still can put them away.
No victim should.
So, John, you're talking about Coleman Young, right?
Yeah,
Former mayor of Detroit, long-term former mayor of Detroit.
20 years.
That is a great story. I did not know that Coleman
Neither did
Young
I.
used to let you use the Lansing office to do your press conferences. That's with White Panthers?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Him and his office mate was Roger Craig from Dearborn, who was Russ Gibbs' attorney. So they were pretty sympathetic because if they smoked weed anywhere in Detroit, it was at Russ Gibbs' place. The Grandy Ballroom. Not only did we smoke weed, but we took a lot of acid there as well.
And they knew it.
A lot of acid. Martin Gross's stepbrother had the acid franchise for Detroit.
Ooh.
And on Friday night, you'd be at the Grandy. You had to climb up that big stairs. And you'd be standing there on the floor, and up the stairs would come Tino's, I'm trying to call his name now. But he was the guy who had the acid. He'd show up about 10 o'clock on Friday night with a big smile, and he'd hand out the acid. Excuse me. Where's Tino now? God damn, this is magic. Excuse me.
Tino. He's watching you, talking about it.
Tinoski.
That's funny.
Yeah, I'll mute his mic.
Thank you. Andy, you were talking a minute ago about other locations in Michigan where something might go down. We'd mentioned about the proximity of 100,000 population cities to Detroit. What other places in Michigan might be successful?
The national
Well,
parks.
I mean, I think I think that Niles, it's hard to say that Niles isn't already successful with, having several cannabis dispensaries, having a large grower about to go in, and having a town that seems to have embraced cannabis. And I
They
think
had an event
Muskegon
there too.
seems to be, they've had 2 there in Niles now. But I think Muskegon, one thing I noticed about Muskegon was that they actually have the Muskegon Convention and Visitors Bureau actually promoted their Muskegon pre-roll trail, which I thought was, great to have a entity out there and, pushing it.
Andy, check this out. The Ann Arbor Convention and Visitors Bureau in 50 years has never once mentioned or promoted the Ann Arbor Hash Bash. By far one of the largest of one single day events that happens in Ann Arbor.
And
Which
yet
also means that when people call and ask for information about hotels for that weekend and all that crap, they don't have anything prepared. They pretend like they don't know what people are talking about. I mean, things may have changed with legalization. I doubt it. But I just find it fascinating that, and, you know, we used to talk to them about it and tell them that, you know, we're bringing tens of thousands of people to town every year. They didn't care. You know, we overwhelm the city. Don't you want to warn people?
Yeah.
And here I did one event in Traverse City, and I get twice a year a little packet from the Traverse City Convention and Visitors Bureau that has some notepads in it or some stickers and stuff. You know, they it's so odd how some places are and some places really aren't that you would expect.
Yeah, that is kind of funny, you know, and that's one of the things we're really hoping to solve with MiCHIGO. And I've
unmute yourself,
fumbled
John.
it, but MiCHIGO.org is our website in case you want to go and check out the report. But definitely, I mean, I think that's one of the biggest challenges that the cannabis industry has right now is to normalize the use of cannabis. And beyond just like in the general societal thing, we have to get in there and we have to show people, we have to say, look, you know, here's the economic impact of hash bash. You know, here's this. We've got to start showing that there are real monetary penalties to being 20 years behind the times, like so much of the state is.
From a tourist point of view, the number one thing that Michigan needs to do is something like New York has, and have a law that says you can smoke a joint anywhere you can smoke a cigarette. Mind you, in New York, you can't smoke cigarettes in the city parks, so you can't go to Central Park and smoke a joint. Not that people don't. Not that people.
But you can on a public sidewalk or something, probably so many feet away from the entrance of a building.
I'll smoke a joint wherever I want to.
No, I get that, John. That's not the issue. I'm talking
I've
about
been doing it for 60 years.
Right, John. I'm talking about the squares. See, Andy deals with all these
squares.
people who didn't want anything to do with this until it was
the
legal.
Squares own everything in this country. Fuck them.
Well, so here's the thing. John, I want to talk directly to you right here. I completely agree with you that the squares own everything in the country. That's one of the reasons that the squares own everything in the country, in addition to them having you addicted to your cell phone, is that the big business moves with markets. And markets kind of they move differently. And one of the things that we saw, you know, with the success of the caregiver system was how when you put the tools in the hands of individuals, they can build really great stuff. And in just that same way, you know, we're hoping to put the tools into people. So maybe you can't stay at the Holiday Inn and smoke weed, but, you know, hopefully you can stay at the family-owned B&B. Hopefully you can stay at the family-owned, you know, cottage resort. Hopefully you can stay at that, you know, that independently owned hotel that's decided that, you know, they want to get into this. Because I think that
you're going to have a list of these, right?
What's
you're
that?
Going to have a directory of these.
Yeah. We, you know, we'll definitely be. You know, one of the situations. All right, I will give you a call to be a member for sure, John.
I just went to a lawyers guild, Michigan Bar Association. They gave me an award at the fucking Soaring Eagle Casino, and I was dying to smoke a joint. But there wasn't anywhere that I knew of to go in Mount Pleasant.
Right.
to have a joint. So I would have been consulting MiCHIGO. Boy, don't ever go to the Soaring Casino.
Exactly.
The Soaring
Cannabis
Eagle.
law section of the state
They
bar.
don't even have room service. It's like
yeah, you know, it's nice
so
though when you see like, you know, I looked at one of the tribes up in the UP has their own dispensary, which I think is super cool, and they're going to be growing their own product.
Yeah,
it's Northern Light
Bay Mills.
Bay Mills, yeah.
Bay Mills, yeah.
And to me, like that's another sort of tourist destination, to be able to come over. And when you look around, one of the things that that I feel is like cannabis is really like alcohol is kind of like a main dish, where it's like a lot of times it's the focus of the experience. But I think that cannabis is a lot of times it's an accessory. I'm at the club. I'm going to smoke some weed. I'm going to go for a hike. I'm going to, eat an edible, all that kind of stuff. Like it's more of a part of life. So I think that there's a lot of ways that businesses can get in. For example, they had the dispensaries in Niles started up a Niles Munchie Trail, where they basically, or actually it was just one dispensary, Green Stem. And they did a Munchie Trail where basically they picked other restaurants in the community, they partnered with them, and then you could go into the dispensary and you could go to all these different places and get discounts. And that's the kind of stuff. I mean, what is the weed economy but hey, check this out, or hey, you ever talk to this guy? It's really, I think that if we get in there early, I think that we can really use the proclivity of cannabis users to build relationships and to kind of think outside of the box into creating something that's pretty unique here in Michigan.
Andy, here's the problem, man. From my point of view, John may agree with me, he may not. I still can't smoke a joint anywhere.
Right.
Okay. No matter who you talk to, it's illegal to smoke a cigarette or a joint in a hotel room. That's a law. That's a federal law. That's the innkeeper law. So those things are never going to change. What I want to see happen is I want to see bar owners not care if people are smoking in their club.
Well,
and
that's
something. Hold on, Andy.
Or like PJs, where they provide a place.
Right. Now that's something that in Detroit we have bars that, I mean, I can tell you bars we used to go smoke in the kitchen. There were bars where you can smoke in the back room, that type of thing. Detroit's a unique place, but once they banned the smoking of cigarettes indoors, that killed the cover for smoking weed. Now, we need to get back to the point where we can have places, I don't mind going and spending my money at a movie theater. I'd just like to be able to light up a joint in there.
Right. Or a concert.
Anything. And they can have, the problem is there are air handlers available so that odor is not a problem. The casinos have proven that. If anybody was ever in a casino where there were cigar smokers standing next to you and you couldn't smell it because of the air handler, it's possible to do this. But we have a ton of work to do because they spent years trying to get the anti-smoking laws in place. And that's what we're really up against.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it ruined it for concerts because you could always smoke a joint at a concert. But now if you smoke a joint anywhere, it stands out like a sore thumb.
Right.
Because
I like to tell
smoking.
I tell this story that Amsterdam did the same fucking thing. They eventually banned cigarette smoking indoors. And my friends all used to we'd go to dinner and they'd roll up their cigarettes and they'd put some hash in the cigarette and they'd smoke it at the table. But I'm a pure joint smoker. So I'd get up waiting for dinner. I'd get up and go outside and duck around the corner and smoke my joint. Once they banned cigarette smoking in the restaurant, all these people would get up and go outside. Now, if I go outside and smoke a joint, I'm frowned upon, because that's not what you do in the streets of Amsterdam outside a nice restaurant, you know.
Mhm.
But the same thing has happened. It's the banning of smoking, which we need to work on, because there's no reason not to allow it. It's not cigarettes. It's not harmful. I get the banning of cigarettes, but we should be allowed to have places that allow it.
Completely.
Well,
Well, they're trying to bar us from the coffee shops of Amsterdam as we speak.
Yeah, but
yeah,
I think the mayor.
Eventually, they're going to succeed because they succeeded on every other measure that they've tried to institute.
Well, we're hoping they'll get rid of the mayor before that happens.
It isn't the mayor. It's the mayor's just
No, I know. It's the Christian Conservative Party.
yeah, it's the Dutch people. Let's say it right out. When you think of Dutch people in Michigan, what do you think of? Holland,
Right.
Yeah.
the worst community in Michigan.
John, making friends.
Well, no, that's what they say in Amsterdam. They say, well, what about the Dutch reform? They said, we got rid of them. We sent them to
Send them to
America.
Right.
They didn't want them.
Yeah,
If
it
any-
is interesting.
If any Dutch people would like to donate to the John Sinclair Foundation, please still do so.
Yeah. Well, I'm not in this for a popularity contest.
Right.
I understand that. I'm just
Yeah, I think one thing that I really do wonder as I'm watching the landscape develop, and you see communities like Muskegon, Ann Arbor, Bay City, who've really gotten out there and really embraced cannabis as a business, and then you've got all these other communities like who are like Grand Rapids, although it seems like they're going to be rolling out something pretty soon. But I just wonder, like, how much different are those communities going to be in 5 years? Are they all going to catch up, or is it going to be the communities that embraced legal cannabis earlier? Are they going to be the communities that sort of win the popularity contest?
No, I think I'll tell you what's going to happen in 5 years. The communities that haven't opted in are going to see the money that's being made in the communities that did, and they're going to come on board, except they're going to come on board at 5 years in the future. So
With a lot of restrictions.
What'd you say?
With a lot of restrictions.
Well, yeah, but they will have it. It'll be a little more cut and dry for them.
Yeah.
Well, if you look at
Jamie.
I don't know if they authorize a certain number of dispensaries, they're going to get a certain amount of money. That's what
Right.
you're talking about.
Yep.
Right.
However, the greater number of dispensaries out there, that money diminishes. And I think that at some point you begin to oversaturate the market. When a lot of places are starting to come online, and then they bump up 10 to 15 dispensaries in a market that right now, I mean, as far as that goes, anybody that wants to use the adult use system has access to the adult use system. I don't know how much
to pay them a lot of money.
Yeah.
Not in Detroit.
Yep. Well, of course not. That's
Except in Detroit.
not in
where you
Detroit at
can't
all.
do it.
There's no adult use in Detroit.
We had
Jamie.
We had 282 successful.
That's one of the reasons I wasn't getting a response.
Yeah.
Right.
Why is nobody listening to me?
We're just winding down, man. Taking the conversation. It's been great. Go ahead, Adam.
Well, John points out these 208 plus dispensaries that Detroit had. That was the greatest anti-blight program the city has ever seen.
Yes, it was.
285 storefronts open up, 283, whatever it was, and most of them were next to either strip clubs or a row of vacant buildings or just undesirable locations.
They fixed up a lot of those areas too. So
And
they
they
rehabilitated hundreds of abandoned buildings.
correct.
And surrounding
They hired hundreds of people who never had a job.
And surrounding structures too, not just their own personal buildings, but they did neighborhood improvement programs. They bought up parking lots nearby and renovated them. I'm telling you, I watched Steve and Bobby do a good job on 7 Mile there.
Here's what you got to know.
Van Dyke.
In the city of Detroit, those 280 plus dispensaries were being fought by preachers in the city of Detroit.
Right.
If you go look at the neighborhood surrounding those preachers' churches, they should be ashamed of themselves because the
they
city
should be arrested.
So we're definitely going over here a couple of minutes, just so long as people are hip to that. So,
the city ran a bond for 250 million, right? 260, whatever it was. They could have easily taxed each one of those dispos $1 million over whatever time.
They'd have paid it.
They'd have paid it gladly.
Damn right.
Just give them. They were happy. Everything was working great, and then these people decided that they were going to fuck it up. Why? Because they're getting paid.
It was sinful.
Anyway,
sinful behavior.
That's one of my pet peeves because it looks so
good. There was a lot of
good.
dispensaries on the south side, 8 Mile, which is the Detroit side. Just a ton of them in that time frame. Some very audacious setups too. Remember the Reef? I mean,
they served the entire suburban area because they wouldn't let them buy any weed. So they had to come to Detroit to buy it, just like they buy pussy for drugs. They had to come to Detroit to get the weed.
However, Ferndale still works the 8 Mile corridor and pulls people over.
Mm-hmm.
That's really sick.
It is, but they do it all. It's sick. Anyways.
They make a fortune doing that. Hazel Park does the same thing.
When your police department is your revenue generator, there is a problem with your government. Okay, motherfuckers.
Well, get the news. But they won't take money from the
now
weed
you're
guy.
Talking.
They won't take money from the weed guy. The weed guy's been trying to give money to the cops for generations. They won't take it.
Why don't be legit? Just make me legit. What do I got to pay to be legit? Right.
I think we could fund the police.
There you go.
You know, but this is our demand.
Fund the police. You should fund the police out of business.
There you go.
We should be limited to traffic stops.
There you go.
Do real enforcement. Hey, I know we are sort of winding down here. Andy, do you want to give us your website shout out one more time, sir?
Yeah, it's MiCHIGO.org, MiCHIGO.org. You can go there. You can, get in touch with us. You can download the report for free. We'd love to hear from you. And
Jamie, Eventbrite is the location for people to get tickets for John Sinclair and the 50th anniversary of the Freedom Rally.
They are going fast. So go to Eventbrite.
We got about 20 left. Is that right, Jamie?
Yeah, maybe less by now. I haven't looked in a little while, but
I want to thank Jamie for helping me with this because we're planning to do a big event, and then the people that were going to do it left town and called me and said they were in Aruba.
Well, if you're going to run to Aruba,
it's not going to be big, but it's going to be very cool, and it's going to it's going to recognize a very important historic.
Well, for me, you get it 50 years once in a lifetime,
Yeah. And of course,
I wanted to show some kind of respect for this
because
it cost me so much,
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Thanks for the memory there too. Thanks for sharing all of those incredible details of historical events that probably would have not been captured on film if it hasn't been for us. Thanks to Mike. Thanks to Adam Brook, Jamie Lowell. Let's wrap it up.
All right. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks a ton, guys.
Yeah, we'll have Charlie back on.
Sorry,
try to smooth that out a little bit, man.
Put me on with him.
That was wild.
Well, I will not. Thank you for the
I'll tell you what I care about money. If I never appear at his event, it won't be no problem to me.
Okay.
Right. A great night.
Thanks very much. Have a good evening. Thanks for jazz cabbaging with us.
Event from me. So
Peace and love.
Great night, guys.
Take care. Thanks, son.
Right on, everybody. Thank you, guys. Have a good night.
bye, Mike.